talking to Peter Diamandis. We're getting a little Greek overload here, and there's a bunch of great stuff in this, but there's one particular section here talking about AI and the Genesis project and some of his speculative ideas for moving things forward with the Trump administration, and it got me chimping last night. So let me speed this up just a little bit, and here we go.
So I want to return for a second before we head to the New Golden Age and Genesis mission to the speed of change. So a mutual friend, Elon, friend of the pod, when I interviewed him a few months ago, he's like, we're going to see double-digit growth in the GDP in the next 18, 24 months, triple-digit growth in 5 years. And then he was on The Economist. I don't know if you saw the clip saying we're going to be by 2036, basically post-capitalist. We're going to have anything you could possibly want will be delivered by AI and robotics. Now, honestly, I think Elon is the most brilliant engineer on the planet. I think most everybody agrees on that. And his predictions are always directionally correct. The timing may be off a little bit. But the speed of change that he's projecting sort of breaks every system. And I'm just wondering, A, could you imagine that speed of change? And, is the appropriate members of cabinet thinking about what the economy looks like in that situation?
It's hard for me even to kind of wrap my head around kind of that velocity of change. But
it's kind of what I'm talking about too. Like when I was talking about the collapse of the old world and the rise of the new world, and they're like ships passing in the night, and you actually want to make sure that those ships like pass each other for quite a while. You don't want them to past each other because civilization is just not equipped, especially after spending, at least a few to several decades being gradually strangled to death, having everything, like just-in-time supply chains is a great example of this, where we've like been enclosed in this fixed system and we're wringing out every last little bit of inefficiency from the system, but it's staying fixed, has fixed boundaries on it. Well, eventually you run out of efficiencies to maximize for. And if the system is built on this premise, when it hits its limits, then it just caves in on itself. So you need to break outside the existing system, and you have to start building out into the frontier and giving the system something to expand into, maintaining that efficiency maximization capacity, but ensuring that doesn't become a bug.
But maybe I don't quite ascribe to that particular speed, but I do think things are changing, and I think our cabinet and leadership in the White House recognizes that and is getting in front of it. I think as you probably saw, Secretary Bessent was very involved in some of the post-Mythos activities that happened in the USG, and I think that's a great example of saying, like, look, like if we have a super...
Talking about Claude Mythos. Jonathan Hemingway over on YouTube said a little bit ago, he said, I've been telling people that we will start growing lettuce in our living rooms and cutting it for daily salads. The tech is going to flatten everything. Think about, like, there's so much leisure time that's going to be opened up, but it's not going to be handled with leisure. It's going to be handled with innovation. People are going to spend that time innovating and beginning to build things for themselves. It's going to be so wildly disruptive, but it's going to happen slowly and then all at once. And we're kind of in between that slowly and then all at once. One big thing is actually having both the funding and the regulatory absence, like the removal of regulatory barriers that permits people to innovate on these sorts of things without having it all be funneled through a bunch of bureaucracy and paperwork and the nanny government. And that's something he gets talking about here in just a sec.
Super capable cyber model that in the hands of the wrong actor could pose a risk to our systemically important financial institutions. We have to approach this seriously and quickly, and we addressed it. And I think that's the kind of action that I think you see a lot of the leaders in the administration taking when it comes to these rapid changes.
Oh. All right, let's turn to Genesis and Golden Age. In your paper, you outline a series of challenges that need to be solved in the age of AI, and I'd like to hit on each one at a time.
Yeah,
because they're really important. And just again, as I was saying before we start here, I was a kid in the candy store reading the Golden Age report. It was like you went much further than I expected, sort of naming ideas, and we'll get to those. So the first point you make is that scientific productivity has been declining despite larger budgets. Irum's law, right? Moore's law spelled backwards. That's sort of like the discovery per unit dollar has dropped. Why? What's going on here? And we got better tools,
Yeah, to me, I think we have been unable to, or just don't unable to change the way that we conduct science. And I think this goes back to kind of one of the.
You could see him really like picking his words very carefully here. Oh, we've been unable to change these things. It's almost like these industries around scientific innovation have been captured by regulators and cartelized. But he's a representative of the administration, and so he's speaking in more, a little more detached terms.
One of the main sort of reasons why we wrote this report. The president wrote me a letter after I was confirmed, and essentially kind of like charged us with how do we revitalize the science enterprise. And we went back and kind of thought about it, and kind of the data that you talked about, kind of this declining productivity was kind of one of the first things that we looked at. And we asked ourselves, why is it? Like, we have better technology than we ever have. Our budgets are more than we ever have. And I think it's most probably relevant in the biomedical field, where
this declining productivity goes hand in hand with the lack of wage growth. Like, that's like, these are almost definitionally, there's like two ways of describing the same thing. Trust Blandstar says, get rid of ag regs and I'll grow a shrimp farm in my shed and sell it to Walmart and golf all day. I'll grow a shrimp nuke. Here's the thing. The future that we are rapidly, hurtling into is a future in which everybody realizes they can do something like this at the same time. Grow a shrimp farm in their shed, sell it to Walmart, and golf all day. So what happens when suddenly you have a mass rush of people going into shrimp farming? They realize, oh, hey, actually, this is easy and cheap, and I have a slave laborer here that can manage these things for me, and I have an endless ability to solve problems with it. You're going to suddenly get a glut of shrimp farmers. And so when you have that glut of shrimp farmers, people are going to be like, oh, okay, well, we don't need shrimp farmers. What else do we need? What else could I do? You're going to be able to monetize your hobbies, and you're going to be able to invent new hobbies and monetize them at the same time. This is what, when they talk about hitting like a post scarcity point, scarcity is never going to go away. We're never actually going to get to post scarcity, because human desire is going to expand beyond the resource allotment. And so it's going to drive human beings further out into the frontier and coming up with new things that are then scarce that you have to solve the problem of it. So it's just moving the problem to a different level. But what it's leaving behind in its wake is massive abundance.
The NIH budget now is ballooned to almost like $45 billion, yet the cost of drugs is more expensive than ever. Yeah. Kind of list goes on. And I think
beer macadamia beef. The Mark Zuckerberg, where he's like trying to engineer ways to come up with like a sort of like American Wagyu, even using macadamia beer, like that sort of thing. So this is going to be wonderful for the like the personality that loves to loves wines or craft beer, where now you're going to have like all different types of like craft meats, where people can be like, okay, you're going to do the macadamia beer, I'm going to do the almond wine beef or whatever. There's all these different variables and different sliders you can start moving around, and suddenly everyone has access to the sliders.
One conclusion we had was like, we just are not experimenting enough in the way that we conduct science. We're doing the same thing over and over again and just putting more money towards it and believing that the outcomes are going to get better. And I think one of the sort of the main sort of core theses of the whole Golden Age report is we have to be more experimental and more ambitious about testing out new ideas. And why I found it so particularly relevant and shocking in the world of science is you would think that in science, those people would be the most interested and the most excited to try different ways of doing science. Yet, funny enough, that community doesn't want anything to change. Yeah, they want the system to be exactly the way it was 30 years ago.
Yeah,
because science has now become a cabal of bureaucrats and administrators. And there's a bunch of different reasons for that. It ties into tenure. It also ties into the grant program, which is something he starts talking about here in just a moment. Lord Breezy says, my classmate literally built a side hustle using AI to build a website that points people to get onto TRT, and he gets a percentage of how many people he gets to a clinic. What a patriot. That's what I'm talking about. You could just spin up a side hustle. And if that one, the ability to spin up a side hustle is going to expand dramatically. And pretty soon, you're going to get more and more people. Like, these are trends that are already underway, but people think of them as kind of like ephemeral or something. Like, I support my family by live streaming on the internet. This is a completely unthinkable career before. Completely unthinkable careers are going to emerge.